Hi everyone, and welcome to week 3. This week we're going to be talking about pharmacology and physiology of drug use, which correlates with chapter 4 in your textbook. The specific objectives for this week are to be able to describe how neurons communicate both electrically and chemically, contrast a dendrite and an axon, explain the effects of various neurotransmitters, summarize the functions of some areas in your brain, list and provide examples of the different factors that alter the effects of drugs, describe how drugs interact with different systems in the body, contrast the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of the autonomic nervous system, describe the additive, antagonistic, and synergistic effects of drugs, contrast between the pharmacological tolerance, behavioral tolerance, cross tolerance, and reverse tolerance, and then list the different mechanisms on how drugs can be administered and discuss those effects of these different routes of administration and the absorption rates. So the assignments for this week include a Mouse Party worksheet, finding peer-reviewed journal articles, Chapter 4 quiz, and of course your discussion board. This is what the Mouse Party worksheet looks like, and you will have to access a website to complete this activity. This is what the website looks like. There is a short intro, but I already went through it, so you wouldn't have to suffer through it again. But what you are going to do is select different mice. Each mouse is a different drug. So you can see this one is heroin, this is ecstasy, this is marijuana, so forth. You're going to take a mouse. I'm going to take my, I think that's heroin mouse, and put it in the chair. And then he's going to go into a machine to analyze how that drug impacts him or her. So there's the brain. Here is the showing the neurotransmitters. And then you can see here, you'll have to click back in next to see the impact of the drug on the neurotransmitter. So you'll just go through this. This is going to go a little slow because I'm recording this. When you go through this, you will also be completing this worksheet. So for the heroin, which neurotransmitter was involved? How did that drug affect the neurotransmitter? And then how does the user feel when taking the drug? And so all of that information can come from this website, the Mouse Party website. Okay, moving on. The next assignment is finding peer-reviewed journals. Now this assignment is going to be related or is related to your drug research paper. The purpose of this assignment is to first, if you don't know what a peer-reviewed journal is to research it and find out what a peer-reviewed journal is and why it's important to find research from peer-reviewed journals. For this assignment, you can utilize our embedded librarian, Christine Kuffel. You can go to the Harper website and or the Harper College Library website and click around. You can use the chat box feature in the Harper College Library website. So there are many resources for you to use to complete this assignment. But essentially, what you're going to do is first you're going to compare what the difference is between a journal article and a magazine article. You can either write a paragraph or create a graphic organizer highlighting the differences. Second, you are going to explain the process of how to find a peer-reviewed journal article using the Harper College Library website. And so for this, you can do a bullet list on the steps you've taken to find peer-reviewed journal articles. Again, do the topic that you have selected for your drug research paper. Or you can create a slideshow with screenshots showing the steps you have taken to find the peer-reviewed journal articles on the drug you chose. And then finally, you are going to write in one paragraph, why do you think I require you to use peer-reviewed journal articles for this paper? I'm not going to go over the next two assignments, but the next assignment is the quiz and then the discussion board for this week, which by now you should be pretty familiar with. So this brings us to our content for this week. So when we talk about pharmacology, what it means is the interaction between drugs and the living organism. And it really relates to the way drugs are administered, absorbed, distributed in the body, metabolized, and excreted, or to get rid of. And these are dependent on the drug itself, the route of administration, how you take in the drug, the amount or dosage of the drug, are there other drugs present in the system, and then a user's previous experience with the drug. When we think about drug actions, drugs affect the nervous system, and the nervous system consists of our central nervous system, which is our brain and spinal cord, our peripheral nervous system, which is like our outer limbs, and then the autonomic nervous system, which are our automatic responses, so heart rates, breathing, respiration, things like that. A neuron is a nerve cell that functions as a messenger. And so when we look at neurons, there are really two types of nerve fibers. There are your dendrites that receive nerve impulses, and your axons, which send impulses away from the cell. And so one way I think about those two is axons start with A and away. So they send messages away from the cell. Neurons send messages electrochemically. Messages between neurons are accomplished chemically. And so this is where the neurotransmitters play a role. And electrical impulses originate in the dendrite and pass through the cell, leaving through the axon, right? Axon away. An action potential is a procedure in how the nerve impulses are transmitted. And the other vocabulary word is synapse, which is the space between an axon and dendrite. And so in your body, these cells are closely together, but there is space between the cells, and that is the synapse. So here is a picture of two neurons, right? So as you can see here, they are not connected, but the synapse is over here. And so here's the axon, and as you remember, axon sends messages away, so it's sending the messages away. This is chemically for the neurotransmitters, which are these black dots. And then this is the dendrite of the cells, these little pokey things out of it, and these are what receives the messages, which in this case are the neurotransmitters. So we look at the actions of the drugs. Neurotransmitters are manufactured in the vesicle of the neuron, and they travel to the synaptic area. Now again, the synaptic area is that little space between the cells. Drugs most likely have their major effect in the synaptic space. Presynaptic drugs are drugs that impact the neuron responsible for causing the neurotransmitters to be released. And a postsynaptic drug are drugs that impact the release, storage, and synthesis of neurotransmitters that have already been released. And so this is an image of synaptic transmission. This image is also in your book, so I'm not going to go through it in detail. But what you can see here is this is the presynaptic neuron. This is the one that's sending the neurotransmitter, and this is the postsynaptic neuron, which is receiving the neurotransmitters. And in this image, the neurotransmitters are the little red dots. So you can see here in the vesicles, these are the ones that create the neurotransmitters. And then here are the vesicles releasing the neurotransmitters. And so there are different neurotransmitters in our body, and each of them react differently. And the drugs that affect our brain do so by either increasing or decreasing the activity of different neurotransmitters in our brain. And neurotransmitters can affect our emotions, our movement, and our cognition, or how we think. Some drugs mimic the actions of neurotransmitters, while others block their actions. And so in the next few slides, we'll go over a few of the neurotransmitters. This first one is ACH, acetylcholine. It's one of the most common neurotransmitters in the brain. Drugs that block the ACH neurotransmitters or receptors are called anticholinergic drugs. The functions of ACH is an excitatory transmitter in the skeletal muscles, meaning it causes the skeletal muscles to contract and move. It's inhibitory in the heart muscle, so it relaxes the heart muscle. And it also has a role in processing memory and learning. A number of hallucinogenic drugs impact the action of ACH and are referred to anticholinergic hallucinogens. Serotonin is another neurotransmitter in our brain. It's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. And serotonin plays a role in regulating pain, sleep, eating, sensory perception, and body temperature. There's also some research to suggest a link between having lower serotonin levels and depression. So just as a side note, many depression medications are serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or sometimes it's selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRI. And what these do is when the serotonin is released into the synaptic space, it blocks the receiving cell from reabsorbing the neurotransmitters or the serotonin, so that more serotonin can build up in the space, which reduces depression. Serotonin syndrome is a potentially life-threatening condition resulting from too much serotonin in that synaptic space. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, inhibits nerve cells being sent from one neuron to another. Drugs that stimulate GABA production leave one feeling relaxed. And so examples of this is alcohol. GHB is also a drug that stimulates GABA production. And then having low levels of GABA are also linked with anxiety, epilepsy, and chronic pain. Catecholamines affect your emotional state. These function repeatedly because they are reabsorbed by the neuron that discharges them. It's called reuptake. Examples of the drugs that impact this are dopamine, epinephrine, and norepinephrine. Dopamine has a significant role in our emotional, mental, and motor functions. Dopamine activates the pleasure system of the brain. When you have an overproduction of dopamine, it produces feelings of euphoria, which is strongly related to drug-seeking behavior. Drugs that influence dopamine are marijuana, nicotine, heroin, and amphetamines. Dopamine has also been associated with pathological gambling, compulsive shopping, and hypersexuality. When we talk about addiction, and we spoke about this during the first or second week, that it doesn't have to be a drug to be considered addiction. It could also be a behavior. And these behaviors have the potential to change the structure and function of brain functioning. So it doesn't have to be a chemical you're taking into the body to be considered an addiction. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are related to our fight or flight response. There are stress, during an acute stress, epinephrine, which is also known as adrenaline, is released, and it speeds up the coronary flow and heart rate. Norepinephrine also is released after an acute stress event, and what it does is it tries to get the body back to normal. So when you have a stressful event, your epinephrine is released, or adrenaline. As you know, your heart rate increases, your blood flow increases, your senses actually get sharper, your muscles are tense, and you're ready to fight or flight. After the stress event, then norepinephrine takes a role and tries and does, but puts your body back to normal. So it slows your heart rate, slows respiration, relaxes the muscles to get back to the homeostatic point. Peptides are substances of linked amino acids, and these, one example are endorphins, and enkephalins are endorphins that are just in the brain. The actions are very similar to morphine and heroin. These moderate one's perception of pain, and your brain naturally emits endorphins during stress and pain. Also emits during strenuous exercise, sometimes called a runner's high. So here's just an image of the cross-section of the brain. And you can see the different areas of the brain. And another image of the brain that just highlights different sections of the brain and what those are related to. These images can be used if you are going to do the extra credit this week, which is about PET images. You will need to have these two images, which will help you determine which areas are being impacted in the brain if you choose to do the extra credit. So some of the areas in the brain, one is the reticular activating system, the RAS. It's located in the brainstem. It plays a role in sleep and wake cycles. It also acts as a filter and helps you concentrate. So it allows a person to focus on an important or significant stimuli. So it's what helps you concentrate in class when there are other distractions in class. This area of the brain has a high susceptibility to drugs. This area of the brain is also implicated in hyperactivity. And so what happens for people who have hyperactivity disorder is that RAS system is not functioning properly. And so instead of filtering out stimuli that is unnecessary or distracting, it is unable to do so. And so for people who have hyperactivity, this part's not working and there's no filters, and every stimulus out there is equally reaching the brain, which would make it very difficult to concentrate and be still. And so that is why when a person with hyperactivity is given stimulants, it actually helps them focus and slow down. And the reason is that stimulants will stimulate the RAS, the reticular activating system, to start doing its job and filtering out unnecessary stimuli. Next area of the brain is the hypothalamus. This is located near the base of the brain. It's also been compared to the central computer. It helps your body maintain homeostasis. So stress, maintain your heart rate, body temperature, and things like that. It's also linked to chemical and behavioral dependence. Our cerebral cortex is the part that distinguishes humans from animals. It's located in your cerebellum, and it's essential for our thought processes and understanding information. Also plays a role in our personality and how we interpret emotions. Our limbic system is considered to be part of our ancient brain. It stores and sorts memories related to emotions. It also stores our brain's reward circuit. And the hippocampus is also associated with the functions of feelings and reacting. Our medial forebrain bundle, MFB, is along each side of the hypothalamus. It serves as a communication route between the limbic system and the brainstem. The sensation of an orgasm starts in this area of the brain, and when the MFB is stimulated, a person feels pleasure. The periventricular system is comprised of nerve cells above and to either side of our hypothalamus. It's associated with punishment and avoidance behavior, and people experience discomfort when this system is activated. Our brainstem is what connects our brain and spinal cord, and it consists of the medulla oblongata, the pons, and the midbrain. The brainstem regulates our vital functions, so our heart rate, our breathing, blood pressure, our vomiting reflex. When people drink too much alcohol and your blood alcohol level gets too high, it starts shutting down this brainstem. And that's why it's really important if someone has alcohol poisoning to bring them to the hospital to make sure that they maintain their vital functions such as breathing and heartbeat, but also the vomiting reflex. The peripheral nervous system is that serves the transmitting agents that links our body's extremities to our brain and spinal cord. We have the somatic nervous system, which controls our skeletal muscles and relays sensory information to our central nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system regulates our blood pressure, gastrointestinal, urinary functions, and body temperature. So these are automatic body functions. And I like to think about it, autonomic is like automatic. This also contains our sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight response, and our parasympathetic nervous system, which allows our body to achieve that resting state following a stress event. There are several factors that influence the effects of drugs in our body. Age. The younger or older you are, the more susceptible you are to the effects of drugs. The only caveat is that tolerance for alcohol lessens as people age up until a certain point, and then it starts to increase again. For gender, females and males respond to drugs very differently. Women generally have a higher percentage of body fat and lower percentage of water, making them more susceptible to drugs or more sensitive. Fat stores drugs and water dilutes the drugs. So there's less water to dilute the drug. In addition, hormones also impact the effects of drugs. Dosage is the amount of drugs consumed, and there's some terminology associated with this. Your threshold dose is the smallest amount of drug required to produce the desired effect. The effective dose is the amount of drug required to produce a specific response, and the lethal dose is what you would think, the amount of drug required to result in death. The other two terms are purity and potency. Purity is the quality of the drug, and potency is the drug's ability to produce a desired effect. Drug interactions. There are some drugs that cannot be mixed. It is estimated that roughly 25% of hospital admissions result from interactions between alcohol and some other medication. The effects can be additive, so it adds to the effects, antagonistic, it takes away the effects, or synergistic, which they add together. So additive or is the cumulative effect of two drugs. Antagonistic are drugs that negate the effects of other drugs. So if I take this drug, it's going to take the effects of the other drug away. Synergistic is that the combined effects of these two drugs are greater than if they were added together. Tolerance is a state of progressively decreasing responsiveness of a drug, and there are different tolerances. There's pharmacological tolerance, where the body adjusts to the presence of the drug. There's behavioral tolerance, where a person learns to adjust to the presence of the drug. An example of that is someone who drinks a lot of alcohol, so they can drink more alcohol and act more sober compared to a person who first drinks alcohol, who doesn't know how to handle the effects of alcohol. Less tolerance are people who develop a tolerance to one drug will develop a tolerance to a chemically similar drug. LSD and psilocybin are two drugs. If you have tolerance to LSD, you will also have tolerance to psilocybin, even if you've never taken psilocybin. And the reverse tolerance is still, there's still some controversy behind it. Some people believe in it, some people don't. Where a drug user will feel the desired effects from lesser amounts of the drug. The one that is often discussed with this is marijuana, where people who have smoked more marijuana in their life will need less and less of the drug to achieve the desired effects. Some people believe that's because of the drug. Some people say it's a behavioral tolerance, but sort of the opposite. You learn the effects of the drug, so you feel the effects sooner. Set and setting is the drug user's psychological makeup, personality, mood, and expectations when using the drug. Again, I'll use alcohol for this. So if a person's in a club and they're really happy and excited and drinking, alcohol is going to intensify those feelings. On the other hand, if a person's really depressed and alone and sad and they drink alcohol, alcohol will intensify those feelings. So those are two very different feelings you get from drinking alcohol. And it is based on the mood and the setting, but also on personality and other factors. And then placebo effect is like inert substances, such as a water pill. They are capable of producing an effect. And again, this is because of the set and setting. May provide relief for 30 to 40% of the patients they are prescribed for. That's a lot of people who experience relief from a water pill. And they're effective because the person feels that they're going to help, that their expectations for the drug is going to do something, so that's what makes them effective. And so here is our last piece of information, are the methods of administration. So as you can see from the image, the fastest are on the left side and the slowest are on the right side. So the methods are oral ingestion, injection, which would be intravenous, intramuscular, subcutaneous, topical application, which would be a patch on the skin, and inhalation, which would be breathing in. This concludes our PowerPoint for this week. Have a great week, and let me know if you have any questions or concerns.